Hi, loves. Welcome to a new episode of the AW Confidential podcast. In today's episode, we're going to get real about the lies we tell ourselves. Have you ever stood in front of a mirror and asked yourself, am I perfect yet? I can tell you that for myself, for a very long time, I did. Trying to find the level of achievement that would get me as close to as perfection as possible it was daunting because I didn't know it at the time, but it's impossible. It's not attainable. It's an illusion. Yet so many of us still continue to try and find perfection. I lied to myself and to others to my detriment. Fear of failure, unrealistic expectations, highly self critical, lack of joy, low self esteem, and I was terrified of making mistakes. A short story. I remember attending an event, going into a bathroom, and looking myself in the mirror. And of course, I could always find something to pick myself apart. A woman came into the bathroom and she looked at me and she said, "Wow, you look so perfect." And at the time, I thought, okay, I achieved that level of perfection, at least for tonight. But as soon as she walked out, I didn't feel perfect. I actually felt really broken. So, if you're asking yourself this every day, every other day, or at any point, know that perfectionism is a real problem and it happens to an overwhelming amount of us. It's a feeling that can leave you feeling unworthy, um, and and like I said, I think the best word to describe it is broken. So I thankfully have done the work and continue to do the work to live in my authenticity and to just be happy in the skin I'm in, no matter what my weight is, no matter how my hair looks, makeup, no makeup. I want to feel my best in my skin. Perfectionism impacts men and women. However, with the beauty standards that are imposed on us, it can feel like we are getting the brunt of the toxicity, because that's what it leaves us with, toxicity. And the standards that are being set, the beauty standards, are unrealistic. I mean, we're supposed to look a certain way, act a certain way, um, just sometimes be something we're not to please others. And this can all lead to, and it has been linked actually, to higher levels of developing eating disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as anxiety and depression. And today I want to have a real conversation about this with the help of a special guest. I want us not only to talk about perfectionism and how it affected our guests and myself, but I do want to make sure that um, our community leaves here feeling like it's behavior that can be unlearned. Now, our guest today found happiness with who she is instead of being the person that the world wanted her to be. Grace Patterson is an LA based actress originally from Dallas, Texas. She was a professional cheerleader, and since moving into her acting career, she has starred in countless Lifetime movies. I can only name a few, but Grace has been part of, let's see, Cheer for Your Life, College Professor Obsession, Spring Break Nightmare, Secrets on Greek Girl, which I think I might have seen at some point, and Love Fast Lane on Peacock. She also is the author of a new memoir, which is called, it's not a coincidence, Am I Perfect? Finding Fullness in My Authentic Self. Hi, Grace. I was trying not to get emotional when I was saying that intro.
I know you almost
It
made
brought
me
me
cry.
back.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Like, I relate to that completely. So, yeah.
It took me back. Thank you so much for being here and, for sharing your story with the world. So you've had your victories. You also had setbacks, which we'll get into later. But how has this journey been for you? When did you start feeling the pressures of society's unrealistic beauty standards? Because I think that's something that we have to touch on, first and foremost.
Yeah. I started feeling the beauty standards honestly really young. In my book I write, I was 10 and I remember going to one of my best friend's houses and her mom was always on the treadmill for like 3 hours a day. And like then my friend was like, "Oh, we need to like not eat carbs." And I'm like, "What's a carb?" And she's like, "We need to only eat turkey." And this girl was a little bit older than me. She was like a year or two older than me. And I looked up to her. And so I just kind of started following her, like, oh, that will be good. We can, eat turkey. And then I grew up in Texas and it was hot in the summers. And she would tell me, let's put on jackets and let's run in the Texas heat. So from like 10 to 12, a little into 13, that's what we would do is like put on the jackets and run in the heat and I tried to do the turkey thing. And then in 8th grade at my school in health class, we had like a calorie counting assignment. And that ended up giving a lot of girls in our school troubles with food because our teacher didn't even explain like how many calories we needed. So we were all trying to eat the littlest we could. So we were all eating like fiber one bars and yogurts for lunch and breakfast. And so I just remember feeling that pressure so young. And then also being involved in the dance world, it is very, body focused. Um, so yeah, I just remember feeling those pressures from such a young age. And it really affected me moving into high school and
Wow.
college. That's when yeah.
Now, you said you were 10. Was it something that you could I mean, did you feel that it was uncomfortable or you sort of just went along?
I think I just remember feeling like, because she's like, "Oh, we need to get like abs," and so I just remember being like, "Oh, that's like what people want. That's gonna make me look good." And I remember like I hate it. Like I would definitely break the turkey diet and stuff, but then I'd be like, "Oh, I need to get back on like the turkey diet." So just from such a young age, my relationship with food was so messed up. Like I didn't like eat like a normal kid, and
Mm.
like I had no sort of knowledge on what like a normal relationship with food looked like because from such a young age my relationship was so skewed.
What point, um, did you start feeling like, "Well, there's something that's off. There's something that doesn't feel right for me?"
Oh man, I my journey was like so I really struggled with like anorexia and bulimia for like close to like 10 years, to be honest with you. Yeah,
Okay.
I in high school, it was like starving myself, trying to get as skinny as possible. I literally didn't get my period till I was 18. Um, like I was like 82 pounds in high school. I was so skinny. And then it turned into binging and purging. And so I remember like the first time I threw up was in high school. And I immediately like went to my mom's office and I like knocked on the door and I wanted to tell her because I knew it was wrong and I knew I need help. Like, this is not normal. And instead, I was just like, okay, love you. Good night. And I didn't tell her. And I remember walking back to my room, like, oh, like, why didn't I just tell her? Like, she would help me if I just expressed that. And instead, I just went to bed and I didn't throw up again in high school. But then when I went to college, I made the dance team in college. And that kind of really progressed my disorder because now we're doing body checks. We're, standing in a sports bra and booty shorts and lining up and, dancing in crop tops. So it's like nothing can move. And by that point, it's like I'd starved myself for so long. And now I was also exercising hours and hours a day. I just started binging and then purging. And I knew it was so wrong. I mean, that's what I would like the next day, I would be like, oh, like my eyes are swollen, my voice is sore. Like, I was like, I can't live like this, but I don't know how to escape it because it's so ingrained in who I am.
So I want to understand, was it a need looking back now? Do you think you were seeking perfection, or was it something else? Was it competing with others? What was it that brought you to that? Because
I
you were
think it was a
10, you were a baby.
yeah. I think I did really feel pressure to be perfect. I'm the oldest daughter too, and I think
Oh, you too. Okay.
yeah, I've connected with. Are you an oldest daughter too?
Yeah.
I think there's something to that being the oldest. I think I felt a lot of pressure to be perfect. I think it was that and then also control. So I think we had,
Mhm.
some things happen in our family when I was younger and I think a need for control and then yeah, I just thought I had such high expectations of myself to be like seen as perfect, which as you
Yeah.
said, possible.
I know. I completely get it. So, what was your breaking point when where you said, did you go to your mom or your doctor or your priest, or what happened that you said, "Okay, I need to take care of myself?"
Yeah, so when I had made the Dallas Stars, I was a professional cheerleader, and, I ended up going and quitting the team. I We made it to playoffs, and I went and I didn't tell my coach that I was struggling, with body image or anything. I just said, like, "Hey, I'm quitting. I'm, like, moving to LA." And so I started therapy, moved to LA. That was kinda like because I just had felt like dance wasn't ever something I really loved. I did it because everybody wanted me to, like my parents and grandparents like coming to the games and it was exciting for everybody, but I always wanted to be an actress. And I had dabbled in it, since I was like 9 years old, but my parents always kind of discouraged me like, "No, like let's not do that." And so that was kind of my breaking point where I was just like, I don't feel like I know who I am or I'm living the life I want to live. And kind of just deciding to go for my dreams and like pursue acting and take my health like not worry about like putting on a crop top. Like I was like it doesn't matter, I just want to focus on healing my relationship with food and eating for enjoyment and having balance. And it definitely took a couple of years after that to like rebuild my relationship with food, but kind of as I started being more authentic to myself and following my heart, it did seem like my internal battles did kind of start to fade away where I didn't feel like I need to, maybe because I'm not battling with myself anymore, I didn't feel like I need to battle with food almost.
Not everyone has access to the same resources. For me, it was therapy.
Therapy, yeah.
My therapist is, I don't know, she's part of my dream team. Couldn't
Yeah.
do it without her.
Therapy is amazing. Yeah, therapy was like my big thing too. I did also see a nutritionist, but therapy has been like a life-changing thing for me.
So, do you feel that part of that process was um changing your relationship with food, and it's a whole um like there's different parts that play into this, I imagine. So how much work did you have to do?
Ah, man, it was definitely a lot of work. Like at first, it was more just because I had restricted like sugars and candy and everything for so long. It was kind of one of those things where I just started like, hey, like you can eat this, like have it every day. Give yourself a little every day. So at first it was like I mainly lived off like sugar, but I was like, that's fine. Like, I'm not overeating it. I'm just like eating mainly sugar and that's okay. I put on a little bit of weight. It was no big deal. And then I kind of realized like, oh wait, now I don't feel the need to binge this food because I eat it all the time. And so it was really healing to do that. And then, now it's like, okay, now I would like a salad, but then, if I want the candy, I can have the candy. So that was kind of the healing process for me is just like at first mainly living off of sugar and like just reintroducing it and making it not such like a bad thing that, I only get on cheat days or I can only have sometimes. Just looking at it all as fuel and, it's nothing to be afraid of.
No, of course not. Well, I love my pizza and pasta,
Yeah.
so I don't do it every day, but
Yeah,
it's just I don't know. I want to be able to enjoy life too, you know? So you have to indulge sometimes a little bit at a time, but
yeah,
so I read during my my prepping that your healing journey, and I think you mentioned it earlier on, that your healing journey began when you moved to LA. What did that path to self-discovery look like for you? Because, you started this chapter of your journey really early, and then, high school and college, and then, you began that healing. So what did it all look like for you?
yeah. Well, LA was, like, the first time me being on my own. I had just graduated college, and so it just felt like the biggest, figuring out who I was, and all of a sudden, I was thrown into getting to do what I loved. Like, I took acting classes, I started trying to do voiceover, I had to put myself out there to make new friends, I was going on auditions, like, it was just such, like, a whirlwind, but I just felt like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is what I've always wanted to do." And then, I booked my first Lifetime movie, and I actually got to, choreograph because I got to use my dance training to choreograph the dances for the movie, and I told them, I was like, "Hey, if I choreograph, can you also give me a role in the movie?" And they were like, "I guess, sure." So I was like, "I'm an actress," and they were like, "Mhm, yeah, everybody's an actress, okay." And so then so I, like, die in the movie, and then, like, so pretty quickly I got to be on set and stuff, and I just felt like, "Oh, this is where I've always belonged." And I always felt like I was kinda, like, quirky and, like, a little too weird on my dance teams and stuff, but on set, everybody's weird. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is, like, where I belong. I can be so weird." And it's appreciated.
But it's all part of self-acceptance. You know who you are, and you embrace all parts you, and and this process to self-acceptance, it's hard. It requires patience and just a willingness to take a hard look at ourselves. So what was the hardest part for you now, looking back of that, of that healing? What was the hardest thing for you? For me, it was to be completely honest with myself. I had to telling myself the truth, forget others.
Yeah.
That was the least of my problems or my thoughts. It was being honest with myself. What was the hardest part for you?
Yeah. I would say similar because I think I always justified having issues with food, like, "Well, I'm not, like, really bulimic because I only throw up sometimes when I overeat," or, "I don't really have this issue because it's only sometimes," you know? So I think kind of having that breakdown where like I remember the last time I had a binge and a purge, I remember just like sitting there and I was like, I can't live like this anymore. I really cannot do this. Like this is bad for my health. My life feels so chaotic living in such extremes, of it's like up here then down there and it's just so I can't.
And
And
you're
I
not being kind to yourself. It's all part of self-love.
Yeah. And then I had talked to my therapist. I was like, "Ah, like, how do you do self-love?" And she's like, "You're such an extremist. Like, stop making it like you have to master it in one day." She's like, "Think about it as a day-to-day thing. Like, how can I love myself in this moment?" And kind of breaking it down like that. Like, I don't have to get life completely right in the grand scheme. I just have to try it moment by moment. Like, am I, being kind to myself in this moment? Maybe I need to like light a candle, journal, breaking it down into moments. And I think that was kind of my issue, being such an extremist. Like I have to like, eat so clean and do cheap. It's like, it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be honoring yourself in the moment. And that kind of helped me really break things down. Yeah.
I love that because I know for a long time I thought I had to have it all figured out. And, it's like, when you read a book and you like a fairy tale and you get to the end and it's like, "Okay, I have it all figured out now." No, it's an entire it literally is a life journey, just self-work over and over again. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
And I can happily say that today I read that you are happy, and we're not no one's happy every day, all day. That's not true. But we are happy in our skin, and we are living in a way that is authentic, and we're truly seeing ourselves. And I remember the first time I saw myself for the first time. It's It's life-changing. It really is. You learn to appreciate yourself in a very different way because you feel whole. So, I wanted to ask you, so now that you're in this space of authenticity, who is Grace Patterson today?
Oh, I love that. Grace Patterson today. Um,
Don't make me cry.
yeah, no, I know that's like such a great question. I feel like, I've the former Grace, I feel like it was very much about like putting on a show for others. In my newest poetry book, I put um performing for those with sadness in their eyes while masking my own cries, my child.
Oof.
And I do feel
Wow.
like I lived, like, a lot like that where it's like, my therapist had said, in different family dynamics, kids take on different roles, and I definitely took on the clown role to make everybody, forget, like, what's going on. And, my therapist told me that's still part of me. I'm still the clown, and that's okay. That's always gonna be a part of me. But now today, I've learned it's okay to not always be the clown, and I'm allowed to, explore different sides of myself. I don't always have to be silly. I can be a writer, I can be serious, I can take on different acting roles that people wanna expect me to take on. So kind of like digging beneath that clown and, letting myself be more than just that. And I don't always have to be happy and, like perform for other people. It's okay to have bad days and it's okay to express other emotions besides,
We're
you know,
human.
yeah, we're human.
And how does Grace show up for herself in her everyday life?
I show up for myself by honestly just honoring what I'm feeling. Like, I feel that I am such a go getter, but in days where I just want to rest or take a day and just write, poetry is something that has been really therapeutic for me. So some days I'll just like take the whole day and like write. That's how I did my last poetry book. I just like binge wrote it in like 3 days. And it was so like healing though to just express myself. Um, so really just honoring, that not every day is gonna look the same, and I don't have to show up for every day the same either.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Now, there are going to be listeners who are starting their own journey in, or they might just be in the middle of, excuse my French, their struggle for happiness. And they right now might be living in a shitstorm because that's fact. We all have those. It just, it's like ebbs and flows of different things that happen in life. So, what is one piece of advice that helped you during your journey that could potentially make a difference for someone else that is in the throes of this personal turmoil?
I think it really helps to, like, go back and think about what made you happy when you were a kid. Because I saw something where it's like, being an adult is kind of going back trying to get back to the closest version of yourself as when you were a kid, and I think the closest you can get to that, like, the happier you're gonna be, so thinking of, like, the little things you enjoy doing and then making time to do it, like, whether it's like, "Oh, I love soccer," my dad loves soccer, and then he joined, like, an adult soccer team, and that brought him a lot of joy. Just going back and finding things that really you feel you're most authentic while you're doing them, Even if it's like reading and like a book club and like finding community that supports you as your most authentic self. And honestly, getting rid of the people in your life that do put the expectations on you to be something you're not. That was really helpful for me too. Like, okay, these people, they don't want me to be my authentic self because that's not my authentic self. So, I can't really be real to myself if they're putting these pressures on me that aren't even in alignment with who I really am.
And I'm glad you said that because we oftentimes hold on to people that just don't deserve us. So I'm glad you said that. Now, your book is out now, correct?
Yes.
So, what do you hope is the main takeaway when we read your book?
I hope that a couple of things. I hope that people feel inspired to go chase their wildest passions, and then B, I hope that it helps people like reflect on their own relationship with food and their body and perfectionism and analyze that
And with
and see
themselves, right?
and with themselves, yeah, and see, like, what ways they can, be more kind to themselves or, find a more balanced life because that's really what it's all about, and I think that leads to ultimate happiness when you can find. Because I remember my dad always told me when I was a kid, he's like, "Balance is the key to life," and I was like, "Well, that sounds pretty simple, like, balance, that's it?" And then you become an adult and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that no like, no wonder it's the hardest thing to do."
It's so true. And then, even I think as a woman,
Yeah.
you become a mom and a wife, and some women want their own careers, build their own empires. You have all these things, and then you have to balance it out with still holding on to you.
Yeah.
It's oh my god, it
So much.
really it's a lot. It's a lot. And I have to say, I don't feel like men have these same there's the expectations are a little, they're a little more lenient with men, I
They're
think.
lenient. Yeah. No, it is true. Women have so many expectations. I'm like, how are you supposed to do all of this?
Absolutely. But I think the beautiful thing about women is that we have the power of vulnerability. And I think what we should do, or hopefully are doing more of, is leaning on each other and having these conversations because there's no shame. We all have stuff. We really all have stuff.
Mhm.
So, I want to make sure that I give you your flowers because you didn't have to come on here and share. So I appreciate you. Please share with our listeners how they can find your book, how they can learn more about you. Share.
Okay, yes. I'm on Instagram. That's my only social media. Just Grace Victoria Patterson. And then my book is Am I Perfect Yet? On Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online, Target, Walmart. And then my new poetry book is called Heart on Her Sleeve. And it just came out like a couple of weeks ago and it's on the same platforms.
Love it. Grace, thank you so much for being here and for sharing. And I wish you much success and just continue to be more of you. You're just your your light is just so warm and friendly. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And so is
Of
yours. You're so
course.
beautiful. Thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you. Thank you. And thank you, loves, for joining us on this episode of AW Confidential Podcast. Talk to you soon.
Aw, I love